Amici carissimi, salve a tutti. Sono qui a presentarvi
Dear friends, hello. I am here to present to you the interview I realized with Giorgio Bongiovanni on September 9th, 2024, an interview that stems from Giorgio's experience the very day before, September 8th, which is that of the bleeding from his wounds from the stigmata that he has carried in his body for a good 35 years. Wounds present in his hands, feet, and left side, which have never disappeared in all this time, even in spite of the numerous controversies that there have been in this regard, but they are futile and sterile polemics, because the evidence says, actually, it's also a direct testimony of me, that these wounds have never disappeared, and which periodically and spontaneously open and bleed, and then close again, just as spontaneously, without any sign of infection, despite the fact that Giorgio does not use disinfectants and has also been diabetic for many years now. During the interview, you will also be able to see the extraordinary images of the bleeding from these wounds, which are surely the most photographed and filmed stigmata in history. The bleeding occurred a few days after the 35th anniversary of Giorgio Bongiovanni's first stigmatization, which took place in the Great Square of Fatima back on September 2nd, 1989. I had already been seeing Giorgio for over a year, as I had met him and his brother Filippo at the explicit and insistent request of Eugenio Siragusa, who was my spiritual father, and also, even before that, Giorgio's. Initially reluctant, I eventually obeyed Eugenio's request because I actually wanted to meet him, but in the end I obeyed to the request. And from Sardinia, where I still lived, I traveled to the Marche region to meet the two brothers. I was then 28 and Giorgio was 25. Two young boys, practically. The next year, imagine how shocking it was for me to learn that a friend had had the exceptional experience of seeing the Virgin Mary and receiving from her the stigmata in his hands. And at that time, it was unimaginable everything that would happen to follow. And that took me to the four corners of the world, and to personally experience incredible, human, cosmic, and mystical experiences. Giorgio and his stigmata, so the wounds that Giorgio carries in his body, were for me an extraordinary Metatron that opened and led me into otherwise impossible scenarios. For those who would like to learn more about Giorgio Bongiovanni's story, I would like to remind you that a few days ago I posted here in my YouTube channel a recent presentation I gave in Poland precisely on Giorgio Bongiovanni's history, mission, and stigmata, where you can see many more images of these signs, and also have a lot more information about what Giorgio is, and has done, and does. I also remind you that these wounds are a very important sign of the imminent second manifestation of Jesus to mankind on earth, and that we are at the end of the apocalyptic process that will forever change the face of planet Earth and humanity, opening for us the doors of the universe and global contact with the highly evolved civilizations of space. Dear friends, the attempt by the forces of evil to stop this process is pathetic and will fail miserably in the face of the power descending from the cosmic and divine heavens. The facts of the world are increasingly terrible, but at the same time, wonderful things are also happening that indicate that the time has come. So, do not be intimidated by the various plans of sleazy homegrown characters like the National Mario and others like Schwab, and the delusional plans of the World Economic Forum. Have faith and certainty that the new era of peace, justice, love, and brotherhood is just around the corner, but only for those who now get into the field and put their hands dirty. For those who remain watching, or worse, are indifferent or live in evil, there is very little hope of salvation. I will say no more, and leave you to the interview with Giorgio Bongiovanni and the pictures of the marks he bears in his body. I wish you to enjoy the vision, and I thank you always with all my heart for your closeness, love, and support. I wholeheartedly thank all of you who have subscribed to my new channel, where I will see you soon with the video where I will answer your questions. See you soon, dear friends.
Quindi amici carissimi, a presto e ancora buona visione. Giorgio Bongiovanni, grazie di concedermi questa intervista.
Giorgio Bongiovanni, thank you for granting me this interview after a particular day that we will discuss now. Yesterday, September 8th, 2024, you once again experienced the phenomenon of bleeding, of which I was personally a witness and was also able to film these blood-stained wounds that were still almost dripping. The recent September 2nd was also the 35th anniversary of this sign that you, I remind the viewers, received at Fatima on the distant September 2nd, 1989. Why, Giorgio, is this sign still present on your body, bleeding, and has never disappeared?
È ancora presente nel tuo corpo, è sanguina e non è mai scomparso.
Intanto grazie a te, comunque premesso, lo dico sinceramente che...
First of all, thank you. However, I sincerely state that for years I have not subjected myself to this kind of interviews, especially concerning this personal, mystical, and very delicate experience that has completely changed my life and that of my family. I am doing it today only out of respect for my faith, for the supposed, but for me real, request of Jesus Christ and the Holy Mother, who asked me to speak about this and explain why I have these signs.
And also to show them.
And to show them, yes. It has been years since I last showed them. I don't remember. I believe it's been 2 or 3 years for sure. And I will show them less and less because, as you said yourself, 35 years. 35 years.
That's a lot.
It's 10,000. More than 10,000 times. Now, I am a bit, you know me, I'm a provocateur. I say it's a miracle if I inflicted them on myself. It's a miracle that I managed to inflict these wounds 10,000, 11,000 times without falling ill or getting infected. In fact, it's not so because these are signs for our faith coming from God, for parapsychology, or those studying paranormal effects, they are parapsychological effects from other dimensions. For those studying psychiatry, they are, even though this is much less demonstrable, schizophrenia of my brain that manages to somatize. But this is not scientifically proven anymore because when it happens with such, let's say, light effects rather than such severe wounds, and then for such a long time, it's difficult. For me, it is a sign of Christ without a shadow of a doubt. Then 35 years, I believe, is a long time.
Well, anyway, Giorgio, it is a sign for those with spiritual faith. It's a sign that we find in the history of figures. Now, of course, I don't want to make comparisons, nor do I wish to offend the sensitivity of any believer, but we know of figures of certain lineage, Padre Pio, St. Francis, Teresa Neumann, and others.
Yes,
who have had these signs.
I truly say, am among these figures. I am not, let's say, a religious figure. I am not a priest. I am not affiliated with any institute within the church. But I am a Catholic in every sense, participating in all the sacraments of the Catholic Church. Furthermore, I believe in the Holy Communion, in baptism, though I also believe that the church is occupied by the corrupted, criminals, mafiosi, or at least it was occupied. Now we have a great pope who is well aware that he is surrounded by vipers. Nevertheless, we remain faithful to our church. Obviously, I am also a scholar of philosophy and theology. The church has eliminated certain doctrines, such as reincarnation, in my point of view, but that is not the subject. of today's discussion. Today's discussion is about Giorgio Bongiovanni, who bears these signs related to the message of Fatima.
Sure.
That is the reason.
Absolutely, yes. Well, anyway.
Not even related to my belief in extraterrestrials, because that is an experience, a different kind of experience, that is involved. But the sign I carry is related to the Madonna of Fatima.
So, to the same prophecy from 1916.
Yes, the prophecy of Fatima, the message of Fatima, the Holy Mother, and thus to the times we live in today, because the message of Fatima was even recalled by Pope Benedict before he left, that it was not over.
Che non era finito.
Esatto. 2010 anniversario, omaggio.
Exactly, 2010 anniversary, tribute of the first apparition. Well, I have witnessed, Giorgio, the analyses that national and international doctors have conducted on you. Science surrenders in the face of these signs, just as it has surrendered to the signs of Padre Pio and Teresa Neumann. Nothing has changed, despite the enormous scientific advancements compared to those times.
Thank God the phenomenon occurs on average every month, let's put it that way. But before, it was every day. When I think about it, I remain incredulous. But for 25 years, 25 years, it happened every day.
Why this reduction in frequency, in your opinion?
Because otherwise I would die, in my opinion. I am neither Christ nor am I.
So, given your age,
Saint Francis is a saint, but he died at 40 from illnesses, and he had the stigmata as well. So, the Father, Christ knows that I no longer have the strength of a 30-year-old. Therefore, thank God, he has stretched out this phenomenon so that it happens on average 10 times a year, 10, 11 times a year, every month and a half, thank God.
I remember it used to be 2, even 3 times a day.
Exactly. Let's say, on average once a day, 365 days a year for 20, 25 years. I'll leave the multiplication to you.
Has there been any change in the intensity of the pain?
No, nothing. Actually, it's gotten worse, if anything. It has intensified, but in my opinion, it's the same. It's just that my body.
Of course.
I also have diseases. I have diabetes. I have tendon and muscle disorders.
Indeed, I see that your arms are bandaged.
Yes, I have tendinitis, I have diabetes. Also, the professor, excellent, who has been examining me for years, whose name I withhold for privacy reasons, the diabetes specialist who has examined me practically from head to toe, because you need to monitor, as all patients with this insidious disease know. He examined everything, including my genitals, so the wounds were right in front of him. The first time he said, "I'm not a believer, I respect it, but you should be dead.
Certainly.
You've been my patient for 10 years. I should be amputating your hands and feet, so I don't understand it.
So, the wounds should...
But I am a witness to what I am seeing."
Because the wounds should become infected in a diabetic?
Absolutely. But not after 35 years, after a week. Those types of wounds are lacerations. Morbidly, they ask me if they are from side to side. I think so, but also that they are acute lacerations. Diabetes is a disease that does not allow you to have these wounds. They get infected, go into gangrene, terrible things happen.
Anyway, we are showing the images at the same time.
Exactly. That is real blood. Those are real wounds.
Real pain.
Morbidly, if you want to check if they are from side to side, I did it once, and they did some tests, but I also want to say that they are only lacerations, but I am not a subject, thank God, like the majority of citizens who do not suffer from diabetes. I am an acute diabetic. I take 3 pills a day, so I should have very serious infections, very serious.
Then I know, Giorgio.
Instead, they heal. The mark remains. On the hands, the mark of the scab. You see, it's like this, fresh, waiting for the next bleeding.
così fresca in attesa della successiva sanguinazione.
Eppure c'è ancora chi ti accusa, addirittura
Yet there are still people who accuse you, even dredging up an old anonymous article that talked about a Mexican guard who supposedly saw you removing the blood cross from your forehead. And there are still people who repost this old anonymous article. No one knows who it is, where they are, or yet they persist in this
It's part of
slander.
the risks of being different. I am different. My difference is not accepted. I want to compare myself, humbly, to Pier Paolo Pasolini in the 70s. That difference was fought against as something disgusting, heretical, yet it was the difference of a human being, expressing his way of living, his way of loving. But he was a great figure, the greatest intellectual in Italian history. Today, those who are different are not only accepted, but they have all rights. Thanks also to the sacrifice of Pier Paolo and others like him, great artists. I am not. Let's say I don't have that kind of difference, but I am different. Acceptance of me will happen in 20 or 30 years. All stigmatized mystics or those who see the Madonna are a category of intellectuals who deserve respect because I don't only do this.
Of course,
I write, read, play music, and sing. Well, I don't sing, but I write a lot. I am a journalist. So I have my intellectual expression and my way of life, in this case mystical, with these different signs.
in your opinion, how does this intolerance from certain people who accuse you of being a charlatan or a fraud,
They are characters who look at themselves in the mirror, because many lay people who do not contemplate God collaborate with me.
how much this intolerance can affect the message you carry, what you write, what you say? Because there is a sign, but there are also words. There are things you say. So in this irritation they feel towards you, these attacks, do they also target the things you say?
There are two types of categories that use these attacks. One is the envious and the jealous. These in my church, the Catholic Church, and in the, let's say, confraternity, founded by my famous spiritual father, Eugenio Siragusa, my envious, jealous brothers. It's normal. It even happened in Christ's time, so they insult me with things that are not true. And also, in other categories of believers, always due to envy and jealousy. Then there is another category which, in my opinion, is more to be studied, that of power. Someone like me, if I had supported racial discrimination, the fascists who are now in power, the friends of the mafias, the friends of entrepreneurs like Berlusconi, who have facilitated organized crime by paying for it, etc., etc., I think I would have received some support from corrupt cardinals that I have severely accused. Perhaps they would have somewhat sponsored me. So that category attacks me not for personal reasons. I don't believe, they don't care.
For interest in power.
For interest in power, because I am someone who disturbs the power. This without a shadow of a doubt. Stigmata or not, I disturb the power. And so they target my difference. It's not that they can say, you are wrong about these mafia investigations, you are wrong about drug trafficking, you are wrong about political corruption, and they say, you are crazy because you have the stigmata. It's obvious. They attack me there.
But it's an accusation, let's say.
It's a baseless accusation because they haven't studied or investigated my case. So, investigate it, study it, and then, if needed, accuse me.
So, when they can't attack what one says, they attack the person to discredit what they're saying.
That's what you believe in a fascist and discriminatory way is a person's weakness. Because Pier Paolo Pasolini was gay, but he was someone who expressed love. Do you understand the fundamental difference? I'm a false prophet. Instead, I express my faith, and these signs appear to me. What harm am I doing? According to theology, I'm a demon. But we can debate this since the time of the Inquisition. Not today. Not today when we have various missionaries who show what the true church is. At most, one could say, God will judge, but Giorgio has this mystical expression, he does good, let him be. That to me would be respect, but sometimes there is none.
A volte non c'è.
Certo. Faccio una domanda al mistico.
Certainly. Let me ask a question to the mystic who bears these signs. You mentioned earlier that you were asked, and I'll open a parenthesis. I know you're very modest and don't like showing these signs.
I really am ashamed.
Also because you're a bit underdressed, so... But you said these mystical visions you have asked you to show these signs again. Why, in your opinion, what's the purpose, the reason behind these signs?
To raise awareness about Christ's message, because the vision we have today, especially in the West, of Christ is distorted. It's even insulting. It's a Christ who is a friend of the rich, a friend of the powerful, a Christ who blesses weapons, a Christ who agrees with war. Instead, since I express this kind of anti-Christ in social activism, in daily life, this kind of anti-Christ that I am the anti-Christ of their anti-Christ. The true message of Christ is for the poor, the last, the discriminated, those without a voice, those fighting against organized crime, those fighting against the pollution of the earth, those who have an open mind to the fact that the universe is inhabited by other beings, our brothers. This kind of Christ, the one who points fingers at corruption, this kind of Christ is what these signs perhaps want to remind people of. This is the Christ to follow, not that I am Christ, that's the message. And so, these signs remind us of that Christ.
So this sign, Giorgio, this request for you to show,
To me, it means that Christ is with me, but it sounds almost arrogant, but it's my faith. For others, it might be, well, perhaps because Bongiovanni works for the last in society. This sign fits. If I were sitting next to the powerful, then I myself would doubt the sign, because Christ was always against the powerful. Then you have writers like Vittorio Messori, who, I don't know if he's still alive, I wish him 100 years of life, said something almost criminal, arrogantly claiming that Christ's tunic was like a Giorgio Armani suit today. Do you understand? These are today's Christians. To justify the church's or its men's wrongdoings, well-known and prestigious writers like Vittorio Messori come to say that Christ's tunic was worth as much as a Giorgio Armani suit today. Do you understand how far we've come as Catholics? That's why they don't like me, Pier, because I tell the truth right to their face. Also, no one pays me. No, one person pays me, Father Adonai, who sends me help to carry out the mission. I mean, I don't have a contract with anyone, while these people have contracts with all the editorial powers in Italy. So, they have to say what they have to say, like puppets.
yes, the pamphleteers,
The usual pamphleteers.
right. So, Giorgio, in this request to show the evidence of these signs, there's clearly a connection between what you do and the sign of Christ.
The sign wouldn't make sense without actions.
Exactly.
However, actions without the sign still make sense.
Certainly.
So, actions are more important than the sign. The sign is important for me, for us, who live the faith of the brotherhood. But the works without the sign can exist. The sign without the works cannot.
A somewhat curious question, not to be morbid, but during this experience of extremely painful bleeding, does something else happen? Do you have visions?
Yes,
How do you experience this?
I see the figure of Christ or the Holy Mary giving me messages, always, either personal ones or ones that I later share with the public.
This time?
This time I saw what I call adoniesis, which is a Hebrew literary form. That means Adonai. Adonai is the Lord, that is, the Father of Christ, who, according to my vision, which may seem far-fetched to many, I think I have received. There's nothing wrong with talking to God. Every Sunday at Mass, we're asked to pray to God.
Of course.
This God, are you praying into the void? If he happens to answer, I'm glad he answered me.
Giorgio Bongiovanni, the modern prophet who speaks with God.
No, Giorgio Bongiovanni, a faithful servant of God, to whom God, for, I can't tell you why, because I don't know, but he speaks to me and he answers me a lot. God answers me a lot.
E gli risponde tanto a me Dio.
Certo. C'è un aspetto, Giorgio, della tua esperienza che...
Of course, there's an aspect, Giorgio, of your experience that, with the details we've highlighted, undoubtedly, stands out in an extraordinary way beyond what is normal for an ordinary person. But there's a connection you carry forward, which is the aspect, let's say, of the life of the universe, of contact with civilizations that are not from this world. Thankfully, today, it has been acknowledged by the Pentagon itself, which finally, after decades of persecution and denial, admits that non-human intelligences and their vehicles are on Earth. They admit this scientifically through the direct experiences of their own military. So, beyond this extraordinary experience you bring, you also have a relationship with these entities. Perhaps someone, Giorgio, might still be confused today, not understanding stigmata, Christ, extraterrestrials. Can you give a brief summary to clarify for those who might remain confused about this aspect of your experience?
Yes, of course. I understand that. We are still in the Stone Age when it comes to these discussions, just as people were in the 1600s, at the end of the 1500s, when someone like Giordano Bruno mentioned the infinite universe. Now, they teach about the infinite universe. To third graders, even children know it. So now we need to upgrade and say that extraterrestrial civilizations exist, they travel through the universe, and they come to us. So, I'm like a kind of Giordano Bruno, telling what, in 5, 6, 8 years, I don't think we will go beyond 2033, 2034, that this contact will happen, and this contact will show.
Are you talking about a global contact?
Yes, between us and these beings. And this will prove not only that we were right, that is, Eugenio Siragusa, these so-called contactees, and I include myself among them who had conversations with these intelligences, but in the end, everyone will be shocked. But that is life. 600 years ago, people believed the earth was flat. They were truly out of their minds. It's laughable. Today we know the earth is spherical, that the universe is infinite. It will be normal for us to contact other civilizations, and it will become routine. What will truly shock the world, though, is that these beings will present themselves as the angels of the Bible, the angels of the Quran, the angels from the Vedic scriptures. These beings were the connection between religion and cosmic science, becoming one and the same. There are no angels with little wings. There are beings from other worlds. And if angels do exist, they belong to other dimensions of the unknown universe, which we call paradise, or the supernatural. In reality, it's all natural. It's all part of the infinite universe, etheric, physical, psychic. It communicates with itself. And so we find life everywhere. Life in the sun, life in the stars, life in the galaxies, life on the planets. We will discover that there are beings who inhabit the stars, who are gods, the famous Greek gods, Roman gods. These were legends, but all, the Egyptian gods, all based on truth. There are beings so highly evolved that to us, they are divine beings. And we will discover that these beings are not atheists. They recognize the one true God. And this is the discovery. We see that there are brothers who live in the cosmos, who have known God very, very closely. They respect Him, love Him, and want to teach Him to us. This will happen. These recordings, then the young people will say, Mr. Pier Giorgio Caria, along with Giorgio Bongiovanni, were our pioneers. They will build statues of us Pier in bronze outside the universities.
The important thing is that
Pier Giorgio with a nice tablet, speaking. This is our pioneer. This is our pioneer. I'm adding a bit of artistic flair, but I assure you it will be like this.
the important thing is that the truth triumphs, Giorgio.
Yes, and that our young people will say, we had fathers of the nation who revealed the truth to us ahead of time. That's how I feel. In fact, woe if they were to recognize me now. It has never happened in history.
Of course.
And it won't happen this time either.
Well, Christ also said, Nemo.
No prophet is accepted in his hometown.
So, all in all.
And since you mentioned Christ, the absolute novelty is that with these beings, Jesus Christ will also arrive.
So, you connect the two aspects, the divine and the cosmic. They are somewhat
one and the same.
There was that famous phrase that our common spiritual father, Eugenio Siragusa, used to say, angels yesterday,
exactly,
extraterrestrials today.
We are the kind of people, and I'm glad, who anticipate to a class of intellectual, intelligent, and sensitive people, truths that will be accepted later, not centuries later, but decades.
Non dico secoli, ma decenni.
We are living, Giorgio, through a very critical moment in human society's history. There's a fierce conflict, and for now, it's the flesh of a people who have been deceived and are being used as cannon fodder. I'm talking about Ukraine. But in reality, it's a confrontation between the East, which is gaining more power, and a West that doesn't want to fall into decline. It's a very dangerous moment, with even heightened talk of a potential nuclear conflict. So, you, Giorgio Bongiovanni, with your experiences, these messages you receive, these bleedings, this consciousness you have, how do you see the future of humanity?
I see it as you said. The Third World War is inevitable. And it's inevitable that in this case, Russia and China, because the goal is to neutralize their power will, being politically and militarily, we all know. They will be surrounded because the United States alliance is far stronger, much stronger.
If only in terms of numbers.
In terms of numbers means technology compared to Russia and China. And so, Russia and China, equipped with nuclear weapons, much more powerful than ours, will be cornered, almost conquered, and will use nuclear weapons, annihilating us and themselves in the process. This is the core of the third secret of Fatima, which thankfully doesn't end like that, because then comes the liberation, the intervention of a divine external force. We call them extraterrestrials, or call them angels, archangels, who will prevent total extermination, not the Third World War, but total annihilation and the destruction of the earth. Because if 10 or 20,000 nuclear bombs go off, the earth itself would blow up. This will happen. It's inevitable. I hope not. If there is common sense from Russia, in this case Putin, who is the leader of the eastern side, our so-called enemy. I don't see him as an enemy. And common sense from our side, from the West, with the new President of the United States, if, as he said, he aligns with Bob Kennedy Jr., we might avoid this Third World War. But I must also say that neither Putin, nor Xi Jinping, nor perhaps even Donald Trump, if he wins the election, truly command the world. The true command is in the hands of the great decision makers of the world economy. It depends on what these decision makers fear. If they fear a collapse, a crash of the economy, they will go to nuclear war to try to salvage what they can. But if they believe that the upcoming economic crisis, which will soon happen, can be overcome, they will hold back the nuclear weapons. So, do heads of state really command? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They are just pawns on a large chessboard where they count as much as pawns.
Pure puppets.
Yes, but even the chess pawn, what does it count for? It counts, but it's still a pawn. There are bishops, rooks, the queen, the king that control the board, especially the knight. But the pawns just make small moves. Sometimes a pawn can deliver checkmate, but only thanks to the whole formation.
Sure.
Behind the big chess pieces,
Dei grandi pezzi degli scacchi.
Il cuore immacolato di Maria.
The Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph. This phrase then hides this entire scenario, including these beings. They are protagonists.
certainly, she said it herself, it will triumph with the second coming of Christ. So, what did God tell me? During the bleeding, He told me that He is present. He has descended to earth. Not me, obviously, but He is here, announcing, along with the Holy Mother, the coming of His Son.
So, he is here to witness this event as well.
Damn, absolutely.
A starring spectator.
Yes, and He wants to speak. God speaks all the time, day and night, unfortunately. For me, I say this jokingly because for me, talking to God, joking with God, teasing God, in the best, purest way, like a child joking with his father, is the most beautiful thing that can happen to you. The important thing is that you don't betray Him, and that you obey His will, and you trust Him. He may leave you with nothing, but you say, Lord, I'm at your service, and then He gives you 100 times more. That's what happened to me. I had nothing, and He gave me 100 times more.
Let's end this interview, Giorgio, with something you want to say to the audience, a message from you.
Cheer for Sinner, who is our greatest athlete in the history of our republic, and trust in God.
E fidatevi di Dio.
Thank you, Giorgio.
You're welcome.
Even the conclusion.
Ciao ciao.